But as soon as the College World Series was canceled, it was like, okay, it's really at this point not a question of if our business is changing, it's just really a question of how much our business is changing and just how long this whole thing's going to last. So when we got that push notification, we just shut the laptops, grabbed the Maker's Mark that we had popped over when we had our first sale ever.
It's supposed to be a celebratory bottle.
Right. Yes.
From Grindstone, this is Nebraska Made, a narrative journey through the lives of Nebraska's most inspiring business leaders. We unpack the intimate details of how our guests navigated obstacles and built their companies in pursuit of the good life. I'm JT Martin, and our guests today are Andrew Prystai and Billy Martin, the co-founders of the event discovery platform, Vesta. Our guests today, Andrew Prystai and Billy Martin, set out in 2019 to create an event platform for discovering and sharing local events. What they didn't know is that they'd run into a buzzsaw in the form of a global pandemic that would shut down the event industry entirely. In March 2020, things looked pretty bleak for them, but then something unexpected happened. Here's Andrew and Billy to tell their COVID survival story.
Yeah, so born and raised in Omaha, Nebraska. Ended up going to Creighton University. Was able to do my undergrad and MBA in 4 years, graduate pretty much debt-free with that. Met my now wife, met the founder of the first startup that I went to there.
And I grew up in rural Missouri and went to the University of Missouri, just did my undergrad in business and marketing there, and got accepted into Straight Shot here in Omaha, which was an accelerator program that I moved up here for a summer, thoroughly enjoyed, made a lot of great friends in the office building that Straight Shot was located in. And it just so happened that Andrew, just total coincidence, was working on the floor above the accelerator, Straight Shot, running a company.
I was inspired to start Vesta when I left the company that Billy was talking about. So I was looking for what I wanted to go and do next. And I had a list of problems of, these are hard enough problems that it feels like something could be done differently here, but they're also big enough markets that all the time, all of the grind will actually might be worth it on the other end, instead of having, a $100,000 business. And that's kind of, the top, that this could be, a $1 billion or $100 billion type of market. And I went through on that list and was vetting out a couple different ones, but the one that just kept coming back was events. At that time, I was on the Omaha Chamber's Young Professionals Board and just kept hearing from dozens of people that they didn't know what was going on in Omaha, and they felt disconnected, and they felt like they would find the cool events from seeing their friends' Instagram after it already happened, or their Snapchat, instead of before when they could still buy tickets to go. And I was like, okay, there's got to be something that we could do differently. Like, there's got to be a better way to connect these two sides and build something here.
Yeah. Sometimes when I start scrolling through my Facebook event feed, it's just like farmer's market, garage sale, all these different things that I'm like, okay, I don't actually know what, hierarchically I really want to be looking at here. What is it about the technology that sets it apart?
Kind of what that patent pending piece revolves around is that there's a lot of intellectual property around recommending the best product on Amazon for you, or the best movie on Netflix for Billy, or the best song on Spotify for me, but there's not a whole lot of stuff out there to say what's the best event or activity or bar that we should all go to together, the three of us, and making that easy and seamless to both find what to do and then also make those plans to go together. And so that's really what we're focusing on, is that group element of it.
So it's early 2020 and Vesta is doing well. They're mostly just focused on Omaha at the time, but they were having steady growth month over month, and they just kicked off 2 new markets, Lincoln and Kansas City. The College World Series was right around the corner, which is a major economic stimulator for Nebraska. And then March 2020 happened. Okay, you're, providing these event services and connecting people and promoting events throughout the community, and then all of a sudden, March 2020, Tom Hanks gets COVID. What happens on that day when you realize, oh my gosh, this entire market's about to shut down?
Yeah, so we, lightly refer to that day as the day the world ended. Yeah. And then we're sitting there trying to work through this, and we get push notification. It's like, oh, NBA's done. And then it's, 20 minutes later, oh, NHL's done.
And the NCAA tournament was a lot of those games are going to be held in Omaha.
Yeah.
At CHI Center.
Right.
And that gets canceled, and then CWS was the big blow.
Right. But as soon as the College World Series was canceled, it was like, okay, it's really at this point not a question of if our business is changing, it's just really a question of how much our business is changing and just how long this whole thing's going to last. So when we got that push notification, we just shut the laptops, grabbed the Maker's Mark that we had popped over when we had our first sale ever.
It's supposed to be a celebratory bottle.
Right. Yes. And poured him a double shot. And we just said, like, hey, we're going to come back tomorrow. We're going to look at the math and figure out, like, what this looks like if it's a 3-month thing and this goes like it did in South Korea where they're able to get through it pretty quickly, or is this going to end up like it does in Italy where things get really ugly really quickly, and we got to have a game plan for both. We pretty much threw everything against the wall from March until kind of August, late July, of like local takeout, like outdoor activities, like stay-at-home activities, digital events, just like you name it. We tried to do something just to keep lights open, to keep things moving forward and grinding forward.
You're building a subscription service here, right, before COVID. Killing yourself to get every subscriber on this. And, once you get a subscriber, the chance of retention is like much higher than just having like a one-off customer, right? What was it like that day that you had to send that email out and say, we're pausing everyone's campaigns?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, that one was easy. Compared to all the other things that came before that and came after that, that one was easy because it was the right thing to do. On the other end, if we were in their shoes of we paid to be able to do things with events, and then through no fault of our own, we're not able to do events, in any shape or form, and it's actively bad for people probably to be hosting those events at that point in time. That one was pretty easy. It was harder kind of figuring out what came next.
Things looked bad for Event Vesta. The World Series was canceled. The March Madness regional games that were scheduled to take place in Omaha were done. And Berkshire Hathaway's annual meeting that brings 50,000 people to Omaha each year was called off entirely. Without any accurate predictor as to when the pandemic would end, Andrew and Billy had no idea how long their finances would keep them afloat. But then they decided to do something aggressive. Instead of pivoting to online events or trying any of the other innumerable online businesses that sprouted up during those months, they decided to double down and branch out into new markets.
We decided to start scaling during late summer and fall. I think we went to Nashville first, who was doing well then. They had another surge later where they had to close some things down. But really what the Southeast and Texas really went well for us. And we figured out kind of through this downtime how to open up new markets pretty quickly and pretty affordably, how to lead gen there, how to get customers in these other markets. And now we're in just about 50. I'm not sure if it's just over or just under that. And that was kind of a saving grace, and it also wound up being kind of what made it look appetizing for us to raise money, I think. But yeah, I think figuring out how to scale and figuring out how to go into other markets was definitely a gigantic blessing in disguise.
Yeah,
from COVID.
It really helps you kind of pause what you were doing locally to kind of plant these seeds in all these other markets. Right.
Yep,
so that when
absolutely.
It did reopen, you guys were ready to run and nationally.
Yep,
Awesome.
Absolutely. I will say when it comes to the scenario planning that we did, the worst case scenario did not involve us raising around and surviving. We didn't see at that point how that would even possibly happen.
Can you tell me about the day that you walk into this meeting with Gordon Whitten at IC Adventures? He's this big VC. You guys are starstruck. You've been wanting to work with him this entire time. And you open up your pitch deck and you're pitching an event app in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah, so the story on that was very much like, yes, we know things are not good outside the rest of the world. The good news was he was on board with that, and really it was kind of all based around this is, a storm that will pass, that there are going to be long-lasting changes because of COVID, but one of the industries that will bounce back extremely quickly is events. And the way that all happened was had a good mutual friend that had worked for Gordon or with Gordon at one of his previous companies. And I knew from his experience with like marketing and travel and analytics and all these different things that like if anybody in the Midwest could be an investor in our next round, like Gordon was at the top of that list if we could make it happen. And then we finally got to sit down with Gordon for the first time, which this was the first time I'd actually ever met Gordon in person, which was super cool, super excited. We were both nervous as heck. I'm like, gotta go in and do this.
Yes.
And
Starstruck.
yeah.
I mean, I think our expectations had been like dashed so many times over the summer with COVID that like I sort of went into it feeling like, well, you know, rejection feels pretty comfortable right now. So this should be, you know, not necessarily with investors and VCs, just with, you know, running an event company during a pandemic.
And so when we finally gave him the pitch, went nowhere like what you'd traditionally expect. If we had the slide deck and we were kind of working through it, but the thing, if you ever work with Gordon, that you understand is like he picks up on things extremely quickly and like makes that jump in logic to the next step. So we pretty much threw the pitch deck away pretty quickly and just got right into the Q&A and only used it to kind of guide the conversation. And what was supposed to be a 30-minute conversation ended up being like 2.5 hours, which got me in a little bit of hot water with my wife, because I had to call her on the way. I was like I wasn't trying to be late, like, but this went super well, and like I can't just like pull myself away from that conversation. Like this is literally like life or death for the company potentially, like all of the grind, all the sacrifice done over the last 2 years. Like, you know, this could be that moment where it tips and pays off.
The moment that he wrote you the check, the moment that he said, hey, I believe in you guys. Did you drink that bottle? Did you go back to the bottle in Maker's Mark? Did you go to...
What I remember about it was, so I mean, we're still right in the middle of COVID. It was a fist bump agreement amongst everyone that just like, and we were all very friendly by then. So it was great. I mean, until exactly that moment, just with how long of a year it had been, or, you know, I think we were not assuming that it was absolutely going to happen, but we were very close, and yeah, I mean, it was a massive relief.
So Event Vesta comes out of COVID with a $500,000 pre-seed round from a local venture capital firm called I See It Ventures, founded by Gordon Whitten, the founder of several other successful Nebraska startups, including Sojourn and Score Vision. And on a side note, Gordon also holds the school record for the most single-season rushing yards at Hastings College. So he knows how to win, and hopes to continue his winning tradition with his investment in Event Vesta. And you guys didn't just survive COVID, you came out with a $500,000 investment, and the next year is going to be Event Vesta's year, it sounds like.
I certainly hope so.
By the end of Q1, we had more customers that we'd brought on in 2021 than we'd ever brought on, maybe not ever prior to that, but more than we had pre-COVID.
This is the part of the show where you get to shout out Nebraska. So I ask at the end of every show, what is it about Nebraska that's made you successful personally, professionally? What is it that's made Event Vesta grow?
I think it's kind of a couple different things. You know, you look around Omaha, you look around Lincoln, you look around the entire state, and, you know, metaphorically and literally, we were built by pioneers. Back in the 1800s, it was built by the crazy people coming here from the East Coast wanting a better life and realizing that if they put in the hard work that they could make a better life for themselves and see the rewards from that. But then looking on generations later, you look around the logos that are in Omaha and ConAgra and Union Pacific and Mutual of Omaha and Kiewit, and you look around Lincoln with Nelnet and Huddle and some of these other companies that are continuing to grow, Firespring, and even in outstate Nebraska. Grindstone, exactly, yeah. Event Vesta, no, retail wear. But you look around at all these different logos, and even if they were attracted back at some point in time, all of them were built here by some founder, by some entrepreneur, and it's continued on even to these days, you know, even with like TD Ameritrade, with the West Corporation, and of course Flywheel, Buildertrend, Huddle, Bulu Box, Firespring, Spreetail, that's only continuing to pick up speed and momentum. And I would venture a guess, I mean, I know for sure Fortune 500s in Omaha on a per capita basis, it was pretty high, and all of them were started in Omaha. I'd be curious to see on the startup level of those companies that have hit kind of that Bulu Box, Buildertrend size, what we work out to on a per capita basis. Because I think pound for pound, the Omaha and Lincoln areas really outpunch on their weight because of that just entrepreneurial spirit that's in the water of people want to build. They want to build a business in particular and make something happen. And it's awesome being around that spirit every day.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of room for people to learn about that a bit more and take pride in that fact. And I think the area would greatly benefit from identifying with it a little bit more.
Today, Event Vesta continues to grow month over month, and their big news is that just last month they released their mobile app for Google and Android, which offers a Tinder-like experience for swiping through local events. You can download the app in your mobile app store. I'm JT Martin, and this has been a Grindstone production. Grindstone is one of the premier production and marketing firms here in Lincoln, offering everything you need to grow your business, from video and podcast production to social media management and media buying. You can learn more by visiting grindstoneagency.com.
We've joked that, if COVID can't take us down as a company, then now we have no excuse.
Yeah.
Now if we fail, it's our own fault. Yeah, at least then we had the easy out, on the resume. It's oh, what happened to Event Vesta? It's well, we started a company and then COVID hit and, it was in events. So that's an easy pass in the interview, right? Now it's oh, you survived COVID. Then what happened? It's well, made a couple bad decisions,
Yeah. Yeah.